Hey, it's Drybear. We are getting some Dragonflight class tuning on January 10th. That it's the next reset coming in this week, and we're going to see some class changes that have buffs and nerfs in them, and that's exactly what we're going through today. As always, if you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. Come by and say hi. And thwam, here we go. January 10th balance changes coming in for WoW Dragonflight. We've got some PvE changes, and we have some PvP changes as well. So let's jump into them. We've seen, we're basically into week 4 of the Mythic Plus and Raid. We're basically seeing, we'll have week 4 next week, but we're got almost an entire month's worth of data on the classes, how they're performing. They did some rushed changes right before the Race to the World first started, and they even acknowledged that these changes are really just to make sure that they get any low-hanging fruit before that process starts, and they have to try to react to things during the Race to the World first. But I think it is encouraging that they have been doing regular changes. Almost every reset, we've seen hot fixes and class tuning and changes for Raid and for Mythic Plus, which is super nice. So these are the changes that we're going to get on Tuesday. Let's jump through them right now. Demon Hunter Vengeance. Demon Hunter tanks are getting a nice buff here. The Hunt's damage over time effect no longer deals an additional tick on application. Damage dealt over the total duration remains unchanged. So they're just not going to have the tick when it first hits and it's already doing upfront damage, and they just adjusted the damage values to be the same, but it doesn't double tap with two numbers. It's just going to be upfront, and then the second tick, or the first tick after the first hit, comes later. Thick skin armor bonus increased to 130%. So a 30% armor increase on thick skin. Calcified skin initial DR, the damage reduction, went from 10% to 12%, so an extra 2% there. And Painbringer went up in duration by 1 second. I actually didn't think that Vengeance was doing all that bad when it came to tankiness, but they also don't have the same kind of recovery that Blood DKs or Protection Paladins do. They don't have the damage reduction that Protection Warriors do, or just the general like armor plus healing that Guardian Bears do. So they kind of have this slow moving health bar that goes down and comes back up depending on how they spend the fragments and how they use up their fury, that sort of thing. So it looks like they just at base without cooldowns weren't tanky enough. And in this case, they're gonna get a nice buff. So Vengeance Demon Hunters rejoice. Feral Druids get a 3% damage increase across the board. Pretty cool. I think Feral's in a good spot for anyone that plays Feral. They didn't get anything flashy going into Dragonflight, but they got some nice quality of life things that smooth out the process and help you play the class. And it was some nice, minor W's that really just made the class feel a lot better. So 3% damage across the board, super nice. Devastation Evoker. I think they've been struggling. I mean, both Raid and Mythic Plus, I have yet to see a single Devastation Evoker thoroughly impress me, and I do pug raids and pug Mythic Plus all day, every day. So it just hasn't happened. I mean, they've played well. They've got good interrupts. They bring a bloodlust, but the damage just isn't there. So we're going to see even more changes after the last one that they did to their single target channel damage that they already buffed in a previous patch. Fire Breath damage increased by 10% for Devastation. Fire Breath already does a large amount, so 10% on Fire Breath is huge. Lay Waste increases Deep Breath damage by 1530 instead of 1020, so a little bit more damage on Deep Breath, which is nice. Eternity Surge damage increased by 10%. This should help in Mythic Plus quite a lot. Firestorm damage increased by 20%. Eye of Affinity generates 2 essence on crit instead of 1. This should help. I'm actually curious to test this out to see if the extra essence on each crit is actually super worth here or not. It could end up feeling a lot better. I think this one you just have to play to see, but it is a nice bonus. I mean, it's just a buff on top of what you already have for Eye of Affinity. Spellweaver's Dominance increases crit damage to 230 instead of 220, so a 10% crit damage increase. And Iridescence damage bonus has gone up 5% from 15% to 20. So a lot of big buffs here for Devastation. I think they definitely needed it. They were about middle of the pack average, And for the new class, I think you probably expected more after all this time. I think they were just waiting to see when all the theory crafting was done and all the dust settles, have people, was it a discovery problem of knowing how to play it, or was it just simply not doing enough damage? And I think after a month, it's just simply not doing enough damage. So there you go. Survival Hunters, another spec that is struggling right now. All ability damage and pet damage increased by 2%, plus Butchery and Carve damage, Fury of the Eagle damage increased by 10% each, and Wildfire Bomb, which is one of their best abilities, damage increased by 15%. So in addition to the flat damage increase for you on ability damage and pet damage, Wildfire Bomb, Fury of the Eagle, Butchery, and Carve are getting buffed as well. Mage, another class that is struggling. Arcane Mage is doing great. Fire and Frost, less so. So even more buffs. We've seen a bunch of buffs for Fire. Almost every class tuning, Fire Mage has been getting a buff, and they're getting another one. Flame Strike damage increased by 15%. Living Bomb damage increased by 25%. I don't know if this is enough to save them. They're still going to be struggling, but this is, it can only help. Frostbolt damage increased by 20%, Ray of Frost 40%, and Glacial Spike by 10%. They made some adjustments, specifically targeting PvP in the last patch, just looking for ways to make the frost damage more consistent and less bursty, less reliant on Glacial Spike to really get that big hit in. So Ray of Frost damage 40%. I don't think this was being used much. So there you go. At 40%, it's worth something. Frostbolt, this should help the overall damage, kind of raise the average DPS up. And then Glacial Spike going up a bit. It may just be backing off of what they did prior. On to Monk. Brewmaster, efficacy of stagger against magical damage increased by 10%. So even for Brewmaster specifically, especially in like Raz, where you were going to take a big hit of magical damage, Brewmasters struggle a little bit. They really only had their magic defensive that had a long cooldown, and when that wasn't ready, that one, so stagger damage staggers magical damage 10% more than it did before, which should help them at baseline with magical mechanics like Razageth and other encounters. This is a huge one. Cooldown of Celestial Brew reduced to 45 seconds from 60 seconds. This is the one where you drink and you get a big shield based on how much you had been storing up. 15 seconds off the top is super nice. That's going to make Brewmaster feel a lot better and a lot more consistent. There was a bit of a high skill ceiling on Brewmaster because Celestial Brew had such a long cooldown, and you really need to manage stacking it as big as you can get it before you consume it. If you missed it or mistimed it, or you used it, before it was ready, you could end up just getting killed, and it made Brewmasters a lot squishier and less consistent than some of the other tanks. So this is a really big buff here. This one is nice, but this one's pretty big. Next up is Mistweaver. If you've been watching my Mistweaver guides, I have covered the raiding and Mythic Plus for Mistweaver. My general opinion, even though I've typically been a Mistweaver main, is that they just aren't performing as well as the other healers. I've played all the healers. They're a little bit behind. So they are going to try and address that. All Mistweaver healing increased by 5% across the board. That's big. That's going to help a lot. Vivify healing increased by an additional 5%. And then they're going to increase the damage done by these. The Blackout Kick, Rising Sun Kick, Tiger Palm, Spinning Crane Kick. Rising Sun Kick going up by 8% is massive. That one is kind of like their biggest single target hit. Blackout Kick 6% is nice. You get multiple versions of this, so this is going to duplicate. And then Tiger Palm going up by 15%. Should help with the Awakened Feline build where you hit multiple targets, and then Spinning Crane Kick damage by 5%. On top of that, when you are running the Awakened Feline build, which is one where you have to stand on the Feline, it now transfers 70% of Spinning Crane Kick's damage into healing, up from 60%. And on top of that, the overall damage is increased by 5%. So this is going to help Fist Weaving out tremendously. You're going to get a lot more damage. Remember, a portion of your damage gets converted into healing when you're Fist Weaving. That healing is increased. So I love all these changes. These are super, super nice. I would like to see a hit maybe on mana consumption or mana cost, or maybe mana regeneration for Mistweaver, because they still struggle with that. But this is a really nice step in the right direction. So we'll see how that affects Mistweavers going forward. Paladin Ret. Retribution. Crusader Strike damage up 40%. Blade of Justice 25%. Final Reckoning 15%. Shield of Vengeance cooldown reduced to 90 seconds from 120 seconds. So this is just buffs across the board. Big damage on Crusader Strike. Final Reckoning, they didn't want to go too crazy on it, but 15% is still a lot. The note they gave here is that Ret's main rotational buttons do not feel good. We'd like to so as we'd like, so we're making changes to help improve these abilities. Additionally, their survivability isn't where we'd like, so we're making some improvements to their defensives as well. So Shield of Vengeance being 30 seconds less on the cooldown means it's more accessible, and then just more damage across the board. I think if you play Ret, you know this all too well. They can't keep uptime like other classes, so when they do reach their target, they need to have respectable damage because they're not the fastest. And when they have to move or do mechanics or run away and then run back, they lose a lot of uptime compared to other classes, so you want them to be dealing good damage when they're in range. Priest. Holy increased all healing by 3%. This one kind of shocked me because I think, I feel like this should be Discipline, not Holy. I think Holy is doing great right now. Actually, Holy is outperforming Discipline in Mythic Plus, and Holy is outperforming, I would say, even Resto Shaman. They're in the top 3, top 4 for sure in Raid. They just have incredible healing. But Blizzard thinks they need more. So 3% healing across the board on Holy going up. And that's just, there's that. They're now better. Shadow, Focused Will provides 10% damage reduction for Shadow, down from 15%. So a little bit of a Shadow damage reduction nerf. For this, I'm guessing, yeah, I was going to say, this has to be for PvP only. So they're making the flat kit on Shadow, the damage reduction from Focused Will. They're losing 5% on that. Mind Blast damage increased by 15% for Shadow only, not Discipline. Mind Flay damage increased by 15%. Includes Mind Flay Insanity, which is a modifier, but not the proc from your idle spawn. Mind Spike damage increased 15%. Void Torrent damage increased by 15%. Devouring Plague damage increased by 15%. Again, I'm kind of shocked here. I feel like, and maybe they're just trying to bring the bottom up. Shadow has been, as people have been getting gear, has been slowly moving from the bottom up to the middle and is still rising. And I still run with incredible Shadow Priest players in Raid and Mythic Plus that blow the charts out of the water. So buffs of this magnitude are kind of shocking to me. But hey man, if you're a Shadow Priest, there you go. More damage coming in, damage reduction coming down, and this is mostly for PvP, just so when Shadow Priest is being targeted, they die a little bit easier. Rogue, Outlaw, Precise Cuts talent, reduced bonus to Blade Flurry damage per missing target below its maximum to 2% from 3%. This one, I mean, Outlaw Rogues are just amazing right now. They say, as we monitor M+ meta and related data, we have recognized that Outlaw is overperforming. Yes, we expect this change will reduce Outlaw's damage output in encounters with target count above 1 and below 8, as their damage is currently more consistent than we intend for damage in encounters that frequently present those circumstances. So they have incredible cleave and great single target. They're being brought some, key key pushing groups that are going, 20, 21, 22 to 25. They're bringing 2 rogues instead of 1. So there's definitely a question there of whether they should be bringing other specs and classes, but this is going to reduce from Precise Cuts, which I think was always run. It reduces the Blade Flurry damage increase from 3% to 2%. So it's a relatively minor nerf, I think, overall, but I guess they're just going to kind of tiptoe it. I mean, this does hurt their cleave quite a lot, but it's not like a big, massive blow. Warlock, in general, struggling. Demonology is doing okay. Affliction and Destruction are in the gutter. They're really struggling hard. Affliction is going to get Agony damage increased by Curse of Agony by 5%. Corruption 5%. Drain Soul 10%. Pandemic Invocation 20%. Seed of Corruption 5%. This is going to help in M+. Shadow Bolt damage increased by 10%. So Drain Soul and Shadow Bolt are mutually exclusive because Drain Soul replaces Shadow Bolt, but they're both getting a 10% increase. Nice. Siphon Life damage 10%, and then Unstable Affliction Backlash damage is no longer increased from increased damage dealt modifiers or effects that increase Unstable Affliction's damage. Interesting choice. I guess damage dealt modifiers or effects that increase Unstable Affliction's damage. The Backlash is no longer modified for that. So I guess that's just flat. This might be another PvP minded change, but there it is. So not as major as like a Shadow Priest, but all these core abilities getting damage increase is really nice. And we'll see if Pandemic Invocation makes its way into builds more often with a big fat whopping 20% damage increase. Destruction, which has been pretty much the bottom of all the charts for the last month. Channel Demon Fire damage increase 10%, Rain of Fire 15%, Soul Fire 20%, Infernal and Blasphemy Immolation damage increase 10%, Conflagrate damage increased by 10%, not in PvP. Immolate damage 10%, not PvP. Incinerate damage 15%, not PvP. So I guess they're just kind of feeling like they're okay in PvP. Conflagrate, Immolate, Incinerate are getting PvE only buffs. They're just trying to reduce the burst that Destruction can do in PvP and then trying to give them more damage. So hopefully this is enough. If you're playing Warlock, this can only be good news. And we'll just see how that affects the damage. And maybe we'll see less Demonology Warlocks and more Affliction and Destruction moving forward. Let's jump into PvP. These are the PvP only changes. Some of these are not massive, but some of them are quite needed for where we're at right now. So for Demon Hunter, Soul Rending Leech bonus reduced by 40% in PvP combat. Soul Rending was just making Demon Hunters regenerate a crazy amount, and they can really stick outside away from their team and arena really far and keep themselves alive with it. So that Leech is going down 40% in PvP. Glimpse for Havoc, damage reduction reduced to 35% from 75%. As we mentioned, they were surviving a little too long on their own. So that's coming down a bit. Actually, not a bit, a lot. 75% to 35%. Essence Breaks damage bonus for Chaos Strike and Blade Dance reduced by 37.5%. Soul Rend damage reduced by 16.7%. We have noticed Havoc Demon Hunters overperforming in several facets of PvP, including personal survivability. I do feel like Havoc Demon Hunters should have burst damage. That's kind of what they do, right? They're really good at that. So I hope this isn't too much of a loss for these two here. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. But the damage bonus on Essence Break, it should help some of the burst, and then Soul Rend damage coming down should help with some of the DPS, but they're still going to be quite threatening. I think the biggest thing is that these two are the changes that I would like to see, just because they shouldn't be surviving on their own away from their team, especially in 1vx scenarios as a DPS class. That's kind of my take on that. Evoker Preservation, energy loops, mana regeneration reduced by 25% in PvP combat. This is the one where I believe you can channel Disintegrate, the single one, and as you channel it, you restore mana. I guess this was restoring too much in PvP, specifically arenas, where mana matters most. Has been overperforming compared to its contribution in PvE due to game-wide reduced mana regeneration with PvE instances. So they're just gonna reduce that by 25%. So Preservation was just too high on mana for too long. Arcane Siphon Storm's effectiveness reduced by 50% in PvP. Rip the Arcane Dream. A culprit for one-shot scenarios who are adjusting its effectiveness down heavily. 50% on Siphon Storm. Wow. Okay. Glacial Spike on Frost. Reduced Glacial Spike damage. Increased from Mastery by 25% in PvP combat. This will be reflected. So Mage damage in Frost for Mastery builds. And then Siphon Storm for Arcane. Pretty large nerfs here. So they just want to preserve Mastery as an option for Frost Mage, but temper the effectiveness stacking had with the spell. You could stack super high Mastery, and then with Glacial Spike, you did some nasty damage. But again, I think that's what mages do. We'll see what this does. It makes them a little less scary, but probably they'll be plenty fine. Monk Blackout Kick damage increased by 30% in PvP combat, was 15%, and then Tiger Palm damage increased by 30%. This is going to help Fist Weaving and Mist Weaving as well, on top of the changes they're already getting. Rising Sun Kick now deals 12.5% additional damage in PvP. This is just to counteract what we just saw above. So Rising Sun Kick 8% overall, and then in PvP they're reducing that by 12.5% on the bonus that it gets. I'm not sure how the math works out there, but it should be. We are looking to offset the incoming PvE buffs to Rising Sun. Okay, so we're on the same page. The PvE buffs that were up here, the 8% that we got for Mistweaver is across the board, and then the bonus that we got in PvP is being reduced. I'm not sure if this is it's probably about the same but I'd have to go look at the numbers. Windwalker, Thunderfist damage reduced by 40%. Skyreach increases critical strike chance by 30% in PvP, down from 50. And then Fist of Fury damage increased by 15%. So this is gonna reduce their damage up, like their burst potential, quite a lot. Thunderfist was a relatively short cooldown ability, but the damage going down by 40% means that there's less extra burst in their kit. Skyreach is I have a love-hate relationship with Skyreach, but the crit chance is going down 20%, but it doesn't crit all the time. And then Fist of Fury damage going up. This is going to help them with their cleave, and then for getting kill opportunities. Because usually you lock everyone down, you pop everything, and then Fist of Fury right when you have your images up or Serenity up, and you get some really nice damage. And then Fist of Fury, you know, if you're able to channel it the whole time without getting interrupted, it's going to have some extra damage on that as well. Windwalker Burst is continuing to be above a level we're comfortable with. We're targeting Thunderfist and Skyreach as they've been large contributors to this. We'll see how that goes. Priest. Flash healing is increased by 30%, up from 20. So just Priest getting better. Well, really just Holy getting better. Healing is increased by 35% in PvP. Holy Word Serenity healing is increased by 15%. So helping Holy Priest in PvP, just to be able to have the big, I mean, really what they have is big heals. If they don't do heals that are big enough, then they're not effective and you would bring a different healer. So, especially since they hard cast so many things, it's definitely important that they have big heals. So that's going to be nice to get the extra little bonus there for Holy. Holy received PvP reductions in casted healing effectiveness in previous patches that we now feeling are unnecessary and are reverting. We also feel Holy Serenity has not been as effective as we would like. Yes. So, like I said, Holy Priest in PvP, if they don't have big heal, then why bring a Holy Priest? I mean, you still have like Chastise and things like that, but that's what they do. So if you hurt that too much, then you kind of take away who they are. Shadow Priest, Shadow Word Death damage reduced by 30% in PvP by 10%. Mind Blast damage reduced by 25% for Shadow only. Mind Spec damage, this is to offset the PvE buffs they just got. So they're making them less bursty in PvP. I'm guessing this is going to be an overall nerf for them in PvP. After like the PvE buffs go up and then the damage in PvP goes down. I feel like this is going to be maybe a nerf. Vampiric damage reduced by 5% in PvP combat was 10%. Devouring Plague 25% reduced in PvP. The proc rate of Shadowy Insight has been reduced by 25% in PvP. And Surge of Darkness proc rate has been reduced by 25%. And they say Shadow Priest has been widely overperforming. So we're looking to offset the PvE buffs to them and reduce their power defensively through changes to Focus Will. So they lose 5% damage reduction for each Focused Will, and then the proc chances coming down on Shadowy Insight, Surge of Darkness, Mind Blast damage, Shadow Word Death damage, Mind Spike damage, Devouring Plague damage, and Vampiric Touch damage coming down. All there. So Shadow Priest getting, I think, slightly worse in PvP with some proc changes, definitely making them worse, and then some buffs for PvE that will offset some of that a little bit. Assassination Rogue had a fall from grace. I hope these are buffs. Improved Garrote damage, bonus reduced by 40% in PvP. Iron Wire's damage reduction buff, debuff, now has a PvP duration of 4 seconds, was base 8 seconds. So 2 nerfs. Assassination Rogue dropping yet again. Spread and single target Garrote pressure has been very high. That is true. We're targeting this by decreasing the effectiveness of improved Garrote. Iron Wire's damage reduction effect has felt too potent to us to preventing enemy pressure. Garrote is actually insanely good. Warlock Demonology. Demonic Strength unleashes a Failstorm that deals damage 150% damage in PvP, down from 400. Whoa. Jesus. Demonic Strength, Failstorm, 400% down to 150%. Demon Fire damage increased by 75%, and Dreadbite damage reduced by 10%. So their note here is we feel Demonic Strength can be a difficult spell to notice. It kind of can. It's rather quiet, and you don't always pay attention to pets. Compared to Demonic Tyrant and its associated Demon Fire cast, we're looking to adjust Demonology's burst sources while aiming to keep them at the same relative power. I don't know if 400% to 150% on the Failstorm And then Demon Fire going up 75%. I don't know if that's, I mean, I think it gets their regular damage up and then lowers their combo potential. Because you like the Fellstorm damage in a combo, especially in Arena, was huge for Demonology. So we'll see how that goes. We also want to slightly reduce Demonology's overall pressure by targeting Dreadbite. So Dreadbite coming down, Demonic Strength into Fellstorm coming down quite a lot. Warrior defensive stance now reduces damage done by 15% from 20% in PvP combat. Thank God. We don't need prot warriors running around owning everything. Defensive stance was adjusted in previous patches to address damage issues we no longer feel are present for warriors. We're increasing damage done by defensive stance to we're increasing damage done in defensive stance to help increase their offensive pressure without affecting them defensively. So this is probably the right change. Prot warriors as an option. I never really like having tanks in arenas, but a little bit more damage done. They probably just weren't just hitting a little too soft, but I don't think, you know, any change to their defense would be ridiculous. So those are the changes that we have for the January 10th coming soon. Let me know what you think down below. If there's things here that you really wanted to see but didn't, what's your favorite change here? Are you playing any of these specs and you're happy to see some buffs? I like that they're targeting some of the lower classes. Obviously, Feral needed a little bit of love. Devastation needed a lot of love. Survival needed a lot of love. Fire and Frost needed a lot of love. Mistweaver definitely needed love. A little bit of change for Brewmaster, but the Celestial Brew is actually insanely huge. This helps a lot. For them, Ret giving them more damage, really big. Shadow buffs, we'll see where that goes. I know a couple Shadow Priests that are going to be out of control with that. Affliction Destruction going up, and then some PvP changes that are pretty substantial in some areas as well. So that's it for today. Come by the stream, say hi. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.